The Galactic Assembly Hall was built to endure catastrophe, yet it trembled now under a far quieter threat. Light bent through crystalline arches, starlight refracting across delegates who had survived wars, plagues, and planetary extinction events. None of them were prepared for the small figure, standing alone at the center platform. Elias Carter, representative of Earth, waited with his hands folded behind his back, posture relaxed in a room that smelled of fear. Around him, hundreds of alien species watched with predatory attention, their gazes sharp, suspicious, and calculating. Humanity was young, untested, and born on a world officially classified as a death sentence. Above Elias, a massive holodisplay flared to life. Symbols translated automatically, resolving into a title that rippled unease to the chamber: Galaxy's Deadliest Animals. One by one, monstrous forms rotated in luminous detail. Creatures with armor thicker than starship hulls. Beasts that exhaled corrosive gas or bent gravity with instinctive ease. Each entry carried a casualty index measured in billions. Delegates murmured approval as the list grew longer, satisfied that fear still held authority here. This presentation was meant to prove a point, and everyone knew it. The crystalline speaker of the assembly addressed the hall, its voice resonating like struck glass. These entities, it declared, represented the pinnacle of biological violence. Entire systems had been abandoned because of them. Fleets had burned attempting containment. The galaxy survived by identifying threats early and erasing them decisively. Its multifaceted gaze shifted toward Elias, hard and appraising. Earth, it continued, harbored comparable organisms, many undocumented, thriving in uncontrolled ecosystems. The question before the assembly was simple: was humanity a risk too great to tolerate? Elias listened without interruption. He studied the rotating predators, eyes narrowed not with fear, but recognition. His memory supplied details the display did not show: the heat, the smell of blood and salt, the way the ground vibrated when something larger than you decided to move. He had seen such creatures before, not in sterile projections, but in the wild chaos of his homeworld. He had bled there. He had buried friends there. Earth had taught him lessons no academy could offer. When the final image appeared, the murmurs sharpened. A blue planet, oceans deep and restless, storms curling like open wounds. Earth's designation glowed beneath it in warning hues. Death World, Category Omega. Several delegates recoiled instinctively. Others leaned forward, fascinated. Elias felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. The unspoken accusation that his species should never have survived long enough to reach the stars. The speaker invited him to respond. For a moment, Elias said nothing. Silence stretched, taut as a drawn blade. Then he exhaled, slow and steady, grounding himself as he had during storms and evacuations. He lifted his gaze to the towering list above him and raised one eyebrow. The gesture was small, almost casual, yet fractured the tension like a crack in ice. He asked whether the list was complete, his tone mild, almost curious. The question rippled confusion through the hall. This was not defiance. It was something stranger. When told the list was exhaustive, Elias nodded thoughtfully. He counted under his breath, lips moving soundlessly. Then he looked back at the assembly, a faint, disarming smile touching his mouth. He remarked that half of the creatures displayed were familiar to him, not as myths or forbidden nightmares, but as part of daily survival, as food, sometimes, as problems to be solved, always. Translators hesitated, recalibrating in disbelief. The reaction was immediate and volatile. Defense fields hummed awake. Delegates shifted, claws flexing, spines flaring. The speaker demanded clarification, its voice sharp with alarm. Elias did not flinch. He explained that on Earth, danger was not theoretical. It lived beside you, beneath you, inside the water you drank. Humans learned early that fear alone could not save them. Only understanding could. As the chamber absorbed his words, Elias felt the moment crystallize. The galaxy had expected confession of guilt or a plea for mercy. Instead, it was being offered context. The predators on the list were not warnings to him. They were mirrors. And as the assembly leaned closer, uncertain whether it was witnessing arrogance or revelation, Elias understood that humanity's trial had truly begun. He straightened his shoulders, feeling the invisible presence of billions behind him. Farmers and doctors, hunters and children, all shaped by a world that demanded resilience. This was not a debate about monsters. He realized it was about perspective, about whether survival through adversity was a crime or a qualification. The assembly waited, suspended between judgment and curiosity, and Elias sensed that whatever followed would redefine how the galaxy understood both Earth and itself. The silence did not break, but it shifted, heavy with expectation, promise, and looming consequence ahead. Elias felt the weight of the chamber shift as his words settled, not like an accusation, but like a challenge no one had prepared for. The speaker did not interrupt him this time. Instead, it gestured, and the hollow display dissolved into motion. Images poured forth, not of alien beasts, but of Earth itself. Seas churned violently beneath iron skies, waves rising like living walls. Forests burned, then flooded, then grew back thicker than before. Mountains split open, vomiting fire and ash. The galaxy watched a world that never stopped trying to kill its children. This, Elias said quietly, is what raised us. The display narrowed its focus. A massive reptilian predator burst from murky water, jaws snapping shut with bone-crushing force. Its scales were scarred, its eyes ancient and calculating. The translation identified it, cross-referencing data with alarmed precision, comparable mass, comparable lethality. Elias named it without hesitation, his voice carrying familiarity rather than fear. He explained how it waited patiently, how it attacked only when success was certain. Around the chamber, delegates shifted uneasily. This was not bravado. It was education. The images changed again. A striped feline moved through tall grass, every muscle coiled for violence. Its gaze never wavered from its prey. Elias described how it hunted alone, how it learned patterns, how it punished mistakes. He spoke of nights where the dark felt alive, of footsteps measured carefully because one sound could mean death. He did not embellish. He did not soften the truth. Earth did not reward arrogance, and neither did his story. A delegate finally spoke, its voice brittle with disbelief. How, it asked, had humanity survived such relentless hostility? Elias considered the question carefully. He did not answer immediately, because the truth was not simple. The display shifted again, showing smaller scenes now. Humans clustered around fire, hands passing tools, eyes watching the shadows together instead of alone. Elias explained that survival was never an individual achievement on Earth. Anyone who tried to stand alone died quickly. He spoke of learning which plants healed and which poisoned, of watching elders teach children not with comfort, but with patience and warning. He spoke of loss, of names forgotten, except by those who still carried the scars. His tone remained steady, yet beneath it lay grief shaped into purpose. Earth demanded payment for every lesson, and humanity had paid in blood and memory. The speaker asked whether humans felt hatred toward their world. Elias shook his head. He said Earth was not cruel, only indifferent. It did not care if you lived or died, and that honesty shaped humanity more than any mercy could have. When disaster struck, there was no villain curse, only reality to endure. So humans learned to help each other, because no one else would. The display showed ruined cities beside rebuilt ones, hands digging through rubble to pull out strangers. Elias did not call these acts heroic. He called them necessary. On Earth, compassion was not weakness. It was survival behavior. Those who refused to help others eventually found themselves alone when the ground broke beneath their feet. Tension rippled again when the speaker asked a question none of them could avoid. If humanity was so adept at surviving predators, what happened when humans turned that skill on each other? Elias' expression darkened, just slightly. He acknowledged the wars, the violence, the long history of mistakes written in graves. He did not excuse them. He explained them as growing pains of a species, learning restraint the hard way. He said Earth forced humans to confront their own capacity for destruction because they saw it reflected daily in nature. Predators that killed only to eat taught balance. Humans who killed without need learned quickly that excess destroyed the group. Progress came slowly, unevenly, but it came. not because humanity was good, but because extinction was patient. The chamber listened, quieter now, the initial fear tempered by reluctant understanding. Elias felt the moment teeter. He was no longer defending Earth alone. He was explaining humanity to itself, aloud, in front of witnesses who might decide its fate. The speaker studied him, refracted light dimming thoughtfully. Finally, it spoke again, stating that knowledge was compelling, but survival stories proved nothing without verification. The galaxy, it said, trusted evidence over testimony. Elias nodded, accepting the challenge before it was fully voiced. He had expected this. Earth had taught him that trust was never given freely. As the holodisplay dimmed and containment protocols began initializing, Elias felt familiar calm settle over him. This was not a debate anymore. It was a test. And tests, he knew, were where humans revealed who they truly were. He straightened quietly, aware that whatever came next would echo far beyond himself, his species, and this chamber alone. The containment arena sealed with sound like a closing vault, reverberating through the assembly hall and silencing every whisper. Elias stood alone at its center, the polished floor cold beneath his boots, the air humming with energy fields strong enough to cage collapsing stars. Above him, layers of transparent barriers separated observer from subject, safety from consequence. The speaker's voice echoed distantly, announcing the verification trial with ceremonial detachment. One apex predator, fully mature. One human representative. No external assistance. The galaxy watched, united by a single expectation of failure. The floor trembled before Elias saw anything. A low vibration crawled up his spine, familiar and unwelcome, the kind that meant something massive had decided to move. He slowed his breathing, forcing his pulse into rhythm. Panic wasted oxygen, and oxygen mattered. From the far end of the arena, armored plates emerged from shadow, followed by a body engineered for devastation. The creature's limbs struck the ground with seismic force, each step deliberate, economical, confident. Its maw open, revealing rows of serrated teeth designed not merely to kill, but to ensure nothing survived the attempt. Gasps rippled through the assembly as recognition spread. This was not a theoretical horror. This was a Krell apex devourer, responsible for the erasure of 3 frontier colonies. No recorded organism had survived prolonged exposure. Elias felt no surge of heroism, no dramatic resolve. What he felt instead was focus, sharpened by long habit. Earth had taught him that all was dangerous when it distracted you from details. The devourer roared, a sound that rattled bone and barrier alike. Elias did not retreat. He studied the creature's stance, the distribution of its weight, the subtle hitch in its left forelimb. Injury, old or recent, it did not matter. Imperfection always mattered. He lowered his center of gravity slightly, hands loose at his sides, posture non-threatening. Predators responded to challenge, not submission, and confusion bought time. When the creature charged, it was with terrifying speed. The distance vanished in seconds, claws carving trenches into the arena floor. Elias moved at the last possible moment, sidestepping rather than fleeing, feeling displaced air brush his shoulder. The devourer thundered past, momentum carrying it farther than intended. Elias turned with it, eyes never leaving its core mass. Around them, the galaxy held its breath. The second charge came faster, angrier. Elias adjusted, counting steps, measuring breathing patterns. He remembered storms, remembered fires, remembered that survival was not about dominance but endurance. When the creature struck again, Elias triggered the device at his wrist, releasing a focused sonic pulse calibrated to disrupt balance rather than cause harm. The wave rippled invisibly through the arena. The devourer staggered, its own bulk betraying it, and crashed onto one knee with concussive impact. Shock tore through the observers. Defense systems primed instinctively, then halted under protocol. Elias approached slowly, every movement deliberate. He stopped just beyond striking range and waited. The creature's eyes tracked him, confused, recalculating. He met its gaze without hostility, without fear. Earth predators understood restraint better than rage, because wasted energy meant starvation. "I don't need to kill you," Elias said softly, knowing translation would carry his intent, if not his tone. I just need you to stop. The devourer rose, muscles trembling, then took a single step back. Another followed. Finally, it retreated into shadow, not defeated, but unwilling to continue. Silence engulfed the arena. Elias stood alone again, chest rising steadily, hands unclenched. He felt a delayed tremor of adrenaline, the familiar aftermath of survival. When the containment fields disengaged, the assembly did not erupt. It remained utterly still. The speaker studied the arena, then Elias, its facets reflecting something new, something unsettled. The trial had not proven humanity's strength alone. It had revealed its discipline. Elias sensed a shift, subtle but irreversible. The galaxy had expected blood. Instead, it had witnessed choice. As the barriers lifted and attention sharpened, Elias understood this moment was not an end, but an opening, and what followed would define far more than his species' fate alone. The assembly reconvened in a hush that felt earned rather than imposed. Elias stood before the council once more, no longer isolated, yet not entirely at ease. The silence carried weight, shaped by what had been witnessed rather than feared. The speaker addressed the chamber, its tone altered, no longer sharp but measured, as though recalibrated by new data. Humanity, it declared, had demonstrated restraint under pressure, intelligence in danger, and empathy in victory. These traits, it said, were rarer than strength. Elias felt tension drain slowly from his shoulders, replaced by something cautious and fragile. The council deliberated briefly, their exchanges swift and private, conducted through pulses of light and compressed data streams. When they turned back, the decision was unanimous. Earth would not be contained. Humanity would not be classified as a threat. Instead, the speaker announced a new designation, one never previously granted to a species so young. Guardian class, a civilization shaped by adversity, capable of confronting violence without surrendering to it. The words echoed to Hall, and Elias understood their meaning with both honor and responsibility. He stepped forward when invited to speak, aware that billions listened through relays scattered across space. He spoke of Earth not as a weapon, but as a teacher. He said his people did not seek dominance or reverence, only cooperation grounded in honesty. Humanity had learned the cost of survival, and it had also learned the value of mercy. These lessons, he offered, were freely shared. The galaxy did not need more conquerors. It needed caretakers willing to stand between fear and annihilation. The speaker inclined in acknowledgement, and the assembly followed. Protocols shifted. Borders that had once been closed began to open cautiously, deliberately. Elias sensed the future pivoting around this moment, fragile yet luminous. Still, doubt lingered beneath the ceremony. He could feel it in the hesitation of distant delegates, in the questions left unspoken. Acceptance was granted, but trust would take time. Earth had proven it could survive monsters. Now it would need to prove it could live among them. Later, alone on an observation deck overlooking the quiet sprawl of stars, Elias allowed himself to breathe fully for the first time since arriving. The vastness before him no longer felt hostile, merely unknown. He thought of Earth, of storms breaking over oceans, of cities rebuilt by stubborn hands. He understood then that humanity's greatest strength was not endurance alone, but the willingness to grow beyond it. Survival had been the beginning, not the destination. A junior liaison approached hesitantly, curiosity outweighing fear. They asked whether humans truly consume creatures others considered nightmares. Elias smiled, weary but sincere. He explained that understanding removed terror's sharpest edge. What was known could be respected. What was respected could be faced. The liaison listened carefully, as though storing the lesson for a future crisis, not yet named. As the stars drifted silently beyond the glass, Elias reflected on the trial behind him and the uncertainty ahead. Humanity had stepped onto a larger stage, carrying its scars openly. The galaxy had glimpsed what emerged when a species was forged by a relentless world and chose compassion anyway. This chapter was complete, but the story was far from over. Somewhere beyond the stars, new challenges waited, and Elias knew that when they came, humanity would meet them as it always had, together. He understood that recognition was not an ending, but a beginning. Earth would be watched, tested, and doubted again. Every mistake would be amplified, every success scrutinized for weakness. Elias accepted that burden without resentment. Responsibility, he knew, was the true cost of survival. The galaxy would learn humanity slowly, through actions rather than promises. When disaster struck distant worlds, humans would answer. When fear demanded extermination, they would argue for restraint. These choices would not always be welcomed, yet they would be made. Elias rested his hands against the glass, grounding himself in the present. He felt smaller than the stars, yet connected to them in a way he had never known. Humanity had not escaped its death-world nature. It had carried it forward, tempered and deliberate. The path ahead promised strain, sacrifice, and misunderstanding, but it also promised purpose. As the assembly lights dimmed behind him, Elias turned from the window with quiet resolve, ready to walk back into the chamber and begin the long work of proving that survival could become stewardship. This final moment offered no applause, no celebration, only direction. Elias welcomed that honesty. Earth had never promised comfort, only endurance. Beyond the chamber waited alliances, conflicts, and consequences still unwritten. He stepped forward willingly, carrying his world's hard-earned wisdom, knowing the galaxy would remember not what humanity had endured, but what it chose to become, together across uncertain stars ahead now forever.